Thank you for the invitation to be with you today. I'm really sorry that I can't join you in York, but I'm going to be at another synod. It's great to have this opportunity, though, to talk with you, if only in this form. What is your vision of a just world? What does a world look like that is more fair, sustainable, equal, life-giving? Well, this is a question that I've been asking Methodists as part of the Walking with Micah project over the last few months. Maybe you've taken part in a justice conversation in your church or local community. I've been wanting to hear from people about their vision for a just world, from people in rural and urban areas, people who are younger, older, in between, from people of all ethnic heritages. And I particularly wanted to hear from people who have personally experienced some of the injustices present in our world. These are some of the things that I've heard. I dream of a world where my asylum seeker friend is listened to by those with power in the same way that I'm listened to. I dream of a world where everyone is fed and can share the food they love with others. I dream of a world where everyone has a home which they can heat and light and feel safe in. Where the worth of a person doesn't depend on the assumptions about the contribution they can make. Where we're all re-engaged with where our food comes from, where everyone can afford shoes, where I don't have to explain to my children what nuclear weapons are, where the rainforests start to grow back. I wonder what your vision might be. Perhaps when I've finished, you might turn to your neighbour and share something of your vision of a just world. Isn't it interesting to look at some of the common threads behind these different expressions of our visions for a just world? I hear the worth of every human being. As Christians might say, it's inherent in every human being, every person, because we're created in the image of God. I hear about the priority, the importance that is given to those who the world pushes to the edge. I hear that justice looks like wholeness, the wholeness of the person, of relationships, of community, which enables us to flourish. And I hear that the flourishing of people and planet are intertwined and how much we long for the restoration of all creation. And I hear of echoes of the need for wisdom, particularly among our leaders, and the longing for peace. Our visions of a just, equal, sustainable, life-giving world would find deep echoes of those things which are deeply rooted within our faith. Incarnation, liberation, wholeness, restoration, peace and love. And if we have a vision of what a just world looks like, a glimpse of God's justice, then when we see injustice, surely we must challenge it. The commitment to challenge injustice is present in the Methodist way of life, as it has been through our Methodist history in various ways. But recently, the Archbishop of Canterbury got into hot water over this with his Easter Day sermon. He condemned the principle of sending some asylum seekers to Rwanda instead of having their claims considered in the UK, by the UK. He was accused of meddling in politics, a strange accusation to throw at a member of the House of Lords. But the Archbishop was preaching the gospel. He said that the world was characterised by sin and evil, and injustice will not always be the case, and that Easter makes another future, not just a dream, but an achievable reality. Good news indeed. But what does that mean for the way in which we live our lives, the decisions that we make, the priorities that we choose? How do we live in the light of God's justice? How do our churches become more involved in changing society to reflect the vision of God's resurrection justice? Well, I think it's really important that we begin with these visions of justice, with the purpose that relights our fire, as it were. Because otherwise there could be a danger of rushing in, of dealing solely with the symptoms of the problem, but failing to tackle the things that are really getting in the way of people being valued, of creation flourishing, of a just peace being achieved. As churches, we are good at bandaging people. And bandages are vital. They can stop us bleeding to death. But we must never stop asking the why questions. Why are people hungry in such a rich country? Why have those who have experienced the worst of climate change contributed the least to it? And why are people fleeing their homes? And why do we make it so hard for them? Desmond Tutu famously said, "There comes a point when we need to stop just pulling people out of the river. We need to go upstream and find out why they're falling in." Why questions help us to keep our eye on the vision of justice and hopefully prompt us towards responses that mean that we're not just trapped in the injustices of the present, but we're able to live in the light of God's justice. The project Walking with Micah is helping the church to explore what might be some of the principles or the foundations of our commitment to justice. The focuses that are the greatest importance to us now. What are we called to do? And the kinds of practices that we can undertake as individuals, as members of church communities, as a denomination to seek social justice. The famous quote from Micah 6:8 reminds us of a prophet speaking at a time of great turmoil, reminding a people who had forgotten what it meant to be in relationship with God. Listen, this is what God asks of you, only this, that you act justly, you love kindness, and you walk humbly with God. We're left in no doubt about the call to live our lives, to act justly. Holding on to a vision of justice and the why questions keep us focused on the challenge to act justly for the transformation of the world. But Micah's reminder that we act justly whilst at the same time loving kindness or loving like God loves is crucial. Doing justice on its own can be cold and distanced and unemotional and unengaged. At its worst, it can veer towards doing justice to people or working for them rather than being with people as they seek justice themselves. Loving like God loves means that we would not do things to people. We wouldn't arrive in a situation and assume we knew what people need or what is best for them. Rather, being part of a community, we begin with the community's aspirations, the community's gifts, the community's wants. We would do justice in ways that honour people's dignity and value. Perhaps this would look like community pantries, which enable people to choose and purchase their own food at affordable rates, or citizens organising groups which bring together different groups in a community to campaign for the real living wage or better housing. Or perhaps it's like the campaign organised before the COP climate change conference in Glasgow, which empowered young people from Italy, Fiji, Zambia, Uruguay and Britain to share their stories of the impact of climate change and to organise a campaign for the whole Methodist family. There are so many ways in which we can ask ourselves, are we loving in the way that God loves when we respond to the call to act justly? And then, of course, all this is rooted in the need to walk humbly with God. Humility is vital when we are working for change or for justice, because we don't always get it right. Our vision of what a just future is only ever partial and provisional, and sometimes we get it wrong. But by walking with God and by knowing that our Methodist emphasis on seeking justice and going to those who need justice most is rooted in God's love for us and for God's world. And we will grow closer to God's nature, which is just, because God is just. So growing closer to God, our vision of a just world will begin to come into sharper focus as God invites us to join in with what God is already doing with this new world that is possible. So what can churches do to become more involved in changing society? Well, you will already be doing so many things through churches or through your community. And there are lots of resources to help you campaign or support your community or work to change things that perpetuate injustice. But as you look at your role, as your church's role and your own roles, I encourage you to reflect on your vision of what a just world looks like and what's getting in the way. And take what is in your heart and the tools that you have to hand to be part of a community of change. and to root this call to live as if another world is possible as we walk humbly with God. If you'd like to know more about Walking with Micah and to take the chance to have a say in shaping the Methodist work on justice before the end of June, then go to the Methodist Church website and search for Walking with Micah. Thank you, and every blessing on you as you meet today.